What's up, gang? Welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mashazday. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, the Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi as I say, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So, come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mashazday, and boy, do we have a special guest. My man, Henk Rogers, is in the house. Henk, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, I'm so pumped for this episode. Before we get started, do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll get going?
Go for it.
All right. So for listeners new to the show, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. People are living their passions and those are creating greatness and doing so despite the odds. And my man Henk here is neither short of passion nor greatness, and we're going to be getting into a lot of the greatness that he's created in the world. So I want to give a little bit of my backstory on Henk. I am, first of all, I'm a native of Austin, and not native, I'm a transplant of Austin. Gosh, never said that before. I'm a transplant of Austin. I moved here about 7 years ago, and I was down at South by Southwest this year, and there's this massive line of people like around the block, like down out in Congress. And we're going to see a movie about these like kids in a mariachi band that my wife wanted to see, and there wasn't much of a line for that one, but it was a great movie, great documentary nonetheless. And I see all these people, and I keep seeing the word Tetris everywhere. I'm like, oh, cool. There's a movie about Tetris. Like I'm a kid. First of all, I'm Gen X. I'm born in '78. My birthday is tomorrow. I'll be 45 years old, and I grew up like, thank you. I'm telling you, I grew up like I was the first kid to get a Nintendo, like one of those things. Like I'm the generation where I was 7 years old or 8 years old when Nintendo came out. And I was like in fourth grade when the Game Boy came out and everyone's playing Tetris. So like I'm a person where literally like it's a bullseye as far as the audience goes for this movie that's going on South by. And I was like, oh, that's cool, man. Maybe I'll try to see that. End up not seeing it. But I get home and I look at my inbox and we got basically a request from a PR group to interview Henk Rogers, the creator and the founder of Tetris. And and I was like, oh my God, this is like serendipity. So my son and I watched the movie, and I got to tell you, Henk, man, we loved the movie. And I told my son, I said, you know what? I think I can have an interview with this guy. And so I hit your team up right back away because it happened right around the same time. And here we are, man. The world has conspired to get us together on the show to talk about all your amazingness. So welcome to the show, and thank you for all the cool things that you've put out in the world, and can't wait to talk all about those.
Looking forward to it.
I'm going to give your formal bio really quickly, and then we'll get jumping into the show. So for listeners who are maybe not familiar with Henk Rogers is an internationally renowned entrepreneur and video game developer, best known for serving as the producer of Tetris. I'm really excited to talk about that. The movie's a huge hit. So his story is subject of the new Apple TV Plus film Tetris that stars British actor Taron Egerton as Rogers, and he plays you. And you guys might know him from Blackbird or Rocket Man. I mean, what badass actor. He's also the founder of Blue Planet Energy, a global leader in renewable energy storage systems, and the founder of Blue Planet Alliance. So we're going to be talking about all these amazing things that Henk is putting out in the world and has put out in the world in the past. But before we get there to what you're working on right now, I'd love if you here at the Greatness Machine, we love origin stories. We know that people don't just snap their fingers and end up creating greatness. There's always kind of a path to getting there. Henk, do you mind giving us a little bit of your origin story?
A little bit. So I'm originally from the Netherlands. Moved to this country when I was 11 years old. Learned English. Ended up going to junior high school and high school in New York City. Stuyvesant High School, if anybody knows where that is. It's math and science high school. My father moved the family to Japan. I ended up on the way to Japan spending a year in Hawaii on the beach learning how to surf and dive. By the time the family moved to Japan, I was going to University of Hawaii, where I majored in computer science and I minored in Dungeons and Dragons. We had a group we called ARG, the Alternative Recreational Realities Group of Hawaii. And we played Dungeons and Dragons and made up rules. I went to university for 3 years. skipped the whole bit about having to take core requirements because I didn't think I needed a diploma of any kind for anything that I was going to do in the future. Chased a girl to Japan. 6 years later, personal computers happened in Japan. And so you could say I was a little bit naive about what computers at the time. I wrote the first role-playing game in Japan called the Black Onyx. I created in 1983. That's back when one person could still create a game. I did all the graphics, I did all the programming, I did all the story, I did everything. And I started a publishing company all at the same time. The game was the number one game in Japan in 1984, and I ended up with a publishing company. I wrote the first two games for the company, and then I started traveling around the world looking for games to bring to Japan. And so, Consumer Electronics Show '88, which is the beginning of the movie, I was there to actually look for games to bring to Japan, and I found Tetris. That's where I found Tetris. Fell in love with the game. Well, there's a whole Tetris story, how I went to the Soviet Union. That's the movie. It's probably easier for you guys to watch the movie than for me to tell that whole story. Long story short, I went to the Soviet Union, got the Game Boy rights to Tetris. A month later, I was back in Moscow, got the console rights to Tetris with Arakawa and Howard Lincoln, the vice president of Nintendo. We became best friends, of course. Fast forward 1995, the rights revert to Alexei Pajitnov, the creator of Tetris. And by that time, I'd made a deal with him we had a partnership to actually make money after 1995. Up till 1995, he could not receive money for Tetris.
Wow.
And today he's living comfortably in Clyde Hill, American citizen. He's all good. Fast forward again, 2002, another big opportunity comes around. I had licensed Tetris to a Japanese company for mobile phones in Japan for like $1 million, and the biggest upfront guarantee I could get in the U.S. from a U.S. company was $25,000. There was a total disconnect about what was going to happen in the U.S. So I thought, this is an opportunity. I started a mobile phone game company of my own in Hawaii. Sold that company 3 years later to the company that offered me $25,000 for well north of $100 million. So I sold that company, Blue Lava Wireless, and a month later, I had a heart attack, 100% blockage of the Widowmaker. And in the ambulance, I said to myself, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. This was after I said, you got to be kidding me. I haven't spent any of the money yet. So
wow,
I
man.
spent the next 2 weeks looking for my missions in life. And that's what I'm doing now, is I'm totally working on my missions.
I love it, man. I'm gonna go back a little bit because there's so much there to unpack, and then we can get to this kind of pivot moment, this do or die moment. So first of all, you had said when you were in university that you like dropped out, I guess, right? No diploma. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, after 3 years, they called me in and they said, "Mr. Rogers, what's going on?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you haven't taken any of your core requirements." And I said, "Well, I've already been to high school." And they said, "Well, if you don't take your core requirements, you're not going to graduate." And I said, "There must be some mistake. I'm not here to graduate. I'm here to get an education. And I've already got it. Thank you very much." And, because I worked my way through school, driving taxi, cleaning grease traps in restaurants, and God knows what kind of dirty jobs. I wasn't going to spend a year paying somebody to tell me some, core requirements. What, English 100? Seriously?
I love that. So it's funny. So I had a conversation with my mom when I was a sophomore in college. I'm like, I think I'm going to drop out of college. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm never going to have a job. I'm working. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work for myself. And I was kind of doing the same thing. I had 3 jobs in college the whole time I was there. Do you think that you always had that like entrepreneurial spirit inside of you? Was that just like something that like made sense for you early on?
I had made up my mind that I was never going to work 9 to 5 or wear a suit. So those are the two things. So I wasn't going to get a job. I was always just going to do my own thing. And Yeah, I guess that makes me an entrepreneur, or it makes me a bum. I don't know
Yeah,
which way that was going to go.
you know what's interesting with that, and I think like listeners who are younger may not appreciate what you just said, but like to say I'm not going to wear a suit in the early 1980s, like that was I mean, this is
I
like
was
there was
72. Sorry,
yeah,
high
70,
school.
like yeah, so, yeah, pardon me. Like this is 1970s. So like 70s and 80s, like there was no like jeans Friday. Like people wore suits to work back then. Like that was the work from home like was when you didn't have a job, right? So like to make that statement, it's a pretty bold statement, especially given like kind of that time. So did you end up when you left? Walk us through a little bit of that. You created the first RPG game, ended up taking that to Japan because you followed your
No,
girlfriend. Did she end
it
up?
was in Japan. I created it in Japan for a Japanese computer. I was
Oh,
living
gotcha.
in
Okay.
Japan.
Where were you living in Japan at that point?
So I moved to Yokohama, which is where my wife was from. So I lived in Japan for 18 years total. 6 years was living in the boonies. I was working for my dad in the gemstone business, developing new process for enhancing gems by either cutting or by heat treatment or whatever. But anyway, I couldn't wait to get out of that business. So my ticket out of that business was creating my own business, and that was uh, making black onyx.
And so, and I appreciate the Black Onyx name with the gemstone, like pivot, right?
The
So,
first
so
100 people to finish the game to the end, I actually sent them a real black onyx.
Oh, I love that, man.
Yeah.
So at that point, video games. This is like the 70s and 80s. Like, my parents, they moved. My mom's American, but my dad's Iranian. Was Iranian, and when he first moved to the U.S. out during right when the revolution happened, like he was like, oh, I'm gonna start a business, and he's like, there's three businesses that he considered: laundromat, gas station, and an arcade, because this is in 1981. This is like brand new technology in the U.S. So were you like feeling like, oh, how like you're creating games? Obviously, you're a big D&D guy. Which, by the way, the new D&D movie, for anyone that's interested, is pretty cool. I just watched it with my kids on Saturday. But what were you like? Oh, this is like a cutting edge thing I want to get involved with. What drew you to video games specifically?
Well, okay. So I've been a gamer pretty much all my life, and as you can tell by minoring in Dungeon, it means I quote unquote wasted a lot of time in college playing Dungeons and Dragons. And so when personal computers came out, first of all, I wanted to be a programmer. I wanted to make things with by using a computer. I'd fallen in love with computers and computer program. They were so powerful. It's like you create something. Once you've created it, it runs perfectly forever. It's like
Yeah,
if you try to program a human being to do something, they're going to deviate from whatever it is that you decide to do because they've got a mind of their own, and a computer does not. It has only your mind. And so I went to Akihabara, which is the place where they sell electronics in Japan, and I figured out which computer was number one or going to be number one. And I looked at all the different games because I thought I can make a game. I looked at all the games and there were no role playing games. So I thought, I
wow,
can do that. Little did I know that I only had 64K. So I made a role playing game in 64K, complete with
wow,
3D, complete with 30 monster graphics and people graphics. And they were all like little miniatures. So you could see everything that your character bought. There was no text inventory. It was all graphic. So I mean, I think the game was pretty revolutionary. I invented bar graphs for life points, and then they would get
wow.
damaged, and that kind of thing. That's become standard in all role playing games, I think, or even other games. Um, but yeah, it was an adventure trying to fit all that in 64K. My imagination, I was going to build this huge game, and I was thinking World of Warcraft, and I
Yeah,
only managed to get this much in. So I had to throw out like character classes, maps, and the fact that I think the brilliance of it was that I figured out the core of role playing. I mean, that's all that was left after I threw everything else out. And so I got people the whole thing about leveling up and going on adventures and danger and life points and monsters and being scared and like overcoming and becoming stronger.
yeah.
All the things that you get out of a role playing game. Those elements were all there.
It's so interesting. Like when you were just talking right now, like my brain went to like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? Like this hero's journey that we go on. And when I think of, we're going to talk more about like the Tetris thing that happened with you, which is obviously massive and world changing. Like that in of itself is a hero's journey. Were you drawn to like the Joseph Campbell hero's journey? Is that something that like has resonated for you for a long time?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's kind of the core of my being, I guess. I tell you an interesting detail about the game. Um, there was a karma counter, and the karma counter is
Mm,
you go -1 if you attack a human or if you attack a monster that's weaker than you that's trying to run away. Because
mm,
everybody has a saving roll to see whether they want to fight or run, and you get one shot. Every time you take a shot at something that's running away, -1. Every time you attack a human, -1. If your karma is not 100 at the end of the game, even though you go to the spot where the onyx is, you won't find the onyx. Then what you have to do
uh,
is you have to go back into the game, and there's when you have an encounter, it's attack, run, or talk, and that talk function really is kind of useless during the game, because why would you talk to monsters? But hey, you know what? At the end, when you talk to monsters or talk to people, +1. So that's how you get your karma back, is by going down.
uh,
And it's like preaching or repenting, by going and talking to
yeah,
people, and that you do that talk 100 times. Then you go to upstairs and find the onyx. And I didn't tell you this anywhere in the game. This you had to find this out, by talking to, I don't know, other people that played the game or reading about it in the magazine or something.
yeah.
It was a secret.
I love that, man. It's a cool little Easter egg. So fast forward, CES 88. It sounds like you did the game and then you decided to start really looking to bring like going to CES, looking for games to bring them. Tell us a little bit about that. And I know like I'm not going to dig in too much. I have some specific questions because I watched the movie and not to give away the movie because I think the movie everyone needs to see it. But
Yep.
yeah, tell us a little bit about that. Like how did you decide, okay, I'm going to go start licensing all these different games and bringing them to Japan? What was the pivot there for you?
Oh well, I just started traveling around the world looking for games. I licensed two of the first four Electronic Arts games, to give you an example. Because
Wow.
I wasn't Japanese, the other game companies in Japan, if they wanted to how can I say, license a game, their salespeople would have to go to the show, go back, and then they would have to talk to everybody in the company and come to some kind of group decision. I could make a decision on the spot and say, and
Yeah.
I had a little spreadsheet worked out. So like, how much can I offer? How much can I make? And so on and so forth. So I could make deals on the fly. So I was much faster than the other companies. And the way it works at CES at that time is every company has a series of monitors of all the products they're going to release in the next year, to show distribution, to show the magazines, and so on. And people would stand in lines behind each monitor to take a turn to play the game. And that's what I was doing, so that I could find out, do I want to license this game for Japan or not? Well, when I found myself at the Tetris line for the fourth time, I realized I was hooked on this game. I wasn't just there like looking for the next game. I wanted to play this game, and yeah, that was how I got hooked on Tetris. And I knew at least we have one customer, me.
Yeah. So a question on this, so the movie Tetris, how did you get involved with that? This is a really the whole backstory on the Tetris, movement that became a worldwide phenomenon. How did you get hooked up with that? Did they come to you? Did you decide that you wanted to do the movie? Like, I'd love to hear a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, so BBC did a documentary back in I think somewhere around 2008. I don't remember the date, but it was pretty good. They basically interviewed the whole cast of characters, including Belikov and Stein, and everybody that was in the movie. And obviously, somebody saw that documentary and decided to write a script for a movie. They thought, oh, this is going to be a movie, and took probably 7, 8 more years before somebody approached us and said, we'd like to make a movie. And from that point, it still took 7 or 8 years for it actually to become a movie. So it's been a long road.
And for yourself, like, did you think to yourself, man, one day they should make a movie on this and on me? Like, was that something that was in the back of your mind ever, or was it something
Never,
that was a surprise for you?
never.
No.
No, the story of me going to the Soviet Union was kind of crazy and terrifying. There's at the very end of the movie, during the credits, you can see some video I took. Okay, and I at that moment was thinking that I'm going on this adventure to the Soviet Union. There is no way I'm going to be able to describe all the stuff that's going to happen to me. So I'm bringing a video camera and I'm documenting some of this stuff so I could show my wife and my staff at the company. But that's all I was really thinking about. So you see me talking to my interpreter, you see me interviewing Alexei Pajitnov, uh, that kind of stuff. I was a tourist at the same time, but pretending to be a tourist anyway.
Right. So I have a question, and you can decide to answer it or not. I mean, most of the time, Hollywood's job is to like tell a story that's entertaining and to make it where people want to like get engulfed in the story. A lot of times, when we see these stories based on a real life, there's some embellishment. Was that story spot on, or was there a fair amount of Hollywood doing their
There was
thing?
a lot of Hollywood in there. They took a year and a half of my life and squeezed it into 2 hours. So, I mean, like to explain a week's long of negotiation, and it's a complicated story. I'm writing the book, by the way. So, at some
Oh,
point,
nice.
everybody be able to read the what actually happened. But the point is that they turned they got the feeling right, and that's the important thing. And I worked on the script with Alexei. We both worked on the script, and we tried to fix the script as much as we could, as much as they would let us. But yeah, there's a lot of Hollywood in there.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to tell the audience because you got to see the movie. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
Hollywood or
sorry, I
not,
can't.
it's
I'm not going to give away the movie.
no, no, no. We're not going to give away the movie. And like my natural inclination is to ask a ton more questions, but I'm going to just say to the audience right now, it's a really entertaining movie. Like it's hard for me to get my kids to watch movies that are not animation based. And my 9-year-old was like, first of all, you're going to love this, Hank. We watched the movie. He was like, "This movie is so good, Dad." And a lot of times I'll get guests on the show based on what my kids are interested in because I'm hanging out with my kids. And like we had one of the chefs from Gordon Ramsay's show on, and my son would come in and say hi, and he's like, "Dad, am I going to get to meet Hank?" And I'm like, "I think you got school, buddy. I'm sorry." So my son really wanted to meet you. He
We can
loved
make
the
that
movie.
happen. We can still make that happen.
All right, all right, we'll do. Well, I appreciate that very much. So my son Pablo's like, "Dad, I want to learn to play Tetris." So we download Tetris after the game. I taught him how to play Tetris, but he loved the movie a lot. And I'm going to tell anyone who's listening, you got to watch the movie. It's a badass movie. It's super interesting. If you're like myself, a kid of the '80s, even if you're not a kid of the '80s, it really kind of gives, I guess, to your point, a feeling of what was the zeitgeist in the world then around Soviet Union, around video games, especially right now. Video games are now you can be a professional video game athlete for Christ's sake. Back then it was like a brand new thing, right? And so it really shows how big that was in the world then, and what's led to now, essentially, like everyone's a gamer now. So got to check the movie out. But I had one question on that, which was, going back to it being a Hollywood story to a certain degree. When you look at, there was a part in there that I picked up after the fact. It looked like the Maxwell family was involved, which ended up, is that accurate? Like so it's Jazane Maxwell, which is a massive story now, right? Like her dad and brother. Did I
Yeah,
get her name right? Maybe I messed
yeah,
her name up.
Jelaine, I think is her name. Jelaine Maxwell's brother. So when I was in Moscow, I was negotiating for the Game Boy rights. And the reason I got on a plane is I'd heard from Arakawa that somebody else had offered him the Game Boy rights. I knew nobody else had the Game Boy rights. And I had hired Robert Stein to be my agent. And I knew he was going to be in Moscow. What I didn't know is that Kevin Maxwell was going to be in Moscow. I had no idea. And halfway through the week, Mr. Belikov asks me, "Mr. Rogers, why should we choose you instead of Kevin Maxwell?" And I'm going, "Whoa, Kevin Maxwell is here?" I had no idea. He was running Microsoft in England at the time. And so I said, "Mr. Belikov, I don't have as much money as the Maxwell, so I'm not going to be able to give you as big of an upfront guarantee as they are, but I'll give you an honest share of the money. All the deals that he had with them before were percentage based. And what happened is you get a percentage of a percentage of a percentage because they're sub
Mm,
licensing. A percentage of a percentage is nothing.
right.
It goes down to zero very quickly. And I said, I'll give you 25 cents per unit for every copy of Game Boy Tetris sold in the world. And he said, how many do you think that's going to be? And I said, well, conservatively, like 30 million units. 30 million units, $7.5 million. That rang a bell in his mind, and basically the idea that I was being completely open, and the contract that I gave him, best contract ever. I had to get a contract. I called my lawyer. It took 8 hours to make a phone call at that time. Called my lawyer, said, I need a contract, 20 pages, no more, no big words. It's got to satisfy Nintendo. It's got to be a fair contract because I don't have time to negotiate. So there's got to be stuff in it for Elorg and stuff in it for me. It's got to be fair. We have one shot at this. You got 24 hours. Here's a fax number. And then I made a friend in Moscow, and she had a fax at her company, a Japanese company, and I got that was the best contract ever. Fair, no big words, and we walked through the whole contract. They loved it. It was like, wow, it was amazing. And Elorg used that contract as basis for all of their future contracts because
Wow.
it was so good. So there you go.
I love that.
That doesn't come through in the movie, but yes, I was definitely there, and we were, Belikov was going back and forth between me in a room and Stein in another room and Kevin Maxwell in another room. We were all there in the same week.
That's crazy. So, for anyone that hasn't seen the movie, Elorg is the government agency that was negotiating this deal because one of their employees, Alexei, created Tetris. So, you got to watch the movie to learn more about that. But is that
Yeah,
correct?
so
Did I
the,
get that?
the way it worked in the Soviet Union is that ordinary citizens and even organizations weren't allowed to communicate outside the Soviet Union. All
Mm,
that communication had to go through trade agencies. And so when Alexei started thinking about releasing Tetris outside the Soviet Union, he had to go and find this trade organization that was able to talk to people outside. And that's Elorg.
got it.
Alexei wasn't working for Elorg. He was working for the Academy of Science, the Computer Center of the
Got it.
Academy of Sciences of the USSR.
Yeah, I think they probably switched that up in the movie, or they didn't tell that part
It's
well
not
enough.
exactly clear, but it's there. You have
Yeah,
to
got
watch
it,
the
got
movie
it.
again.
Yeah, I will. I love that movie. So, amazing movie. Everyone's got to check it out. And then from that, obviously, the world changed. Tetris went out in the world. The Game Boy blew that up, made it huge. Nintendo probably is what it is today, possibly because of this movement with that game and then some. So, tell us a little bit more. Like you end up, getting Tetris out in the world, doing a bunch of stuff with. I'm assuming that you continue to work with Nintendo, and you had said that you were working with those gentlemen. Tell us what happened after the movie. When the movie ends, I'd love to hear what happens going forward from that point.
Well, I kind of rushed through it before, but come end of 1995, all Tetris rights in the world come to an end because when we did the deal for console, we needed right of title going all the way back to the author. And so paperwork was created all the way back to Alexei Pajitnov. And the paper that Alexei Pajitnov signed was he assigned his rights to the game to the Computer Center for a period of 10 years, which started in 1985 and ended in 1995. Nobody thought that Tetris would be an issue after that. I mean, games
What,
just don't
did you
last
say?
that long.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is it because they're like, oh, it'll be popular and then no one's gonna care? Kind of like Jungle Hunt or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
these Atari
exactly.
games that no one cares about anymore.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so the licensing kind of burned off, and
And then
and
95, but it was still a big deal at the end of 1995. And, Sony had come into the world and with PlayStation. And up till then, Nintendo had an exclusive, for console, and they kept Sony and Sega and everybody else out. And so when Alexei and I formed our partnership, and then we went to bat, we ended up fighting with Elorg because Elorg had copyrights and trademarks in 60 countries.
Oh
Thank you,
wow.
Nintendo. That was part of their deal with Nintendo, was to register the copyright and trademark in 60 countries. And we would have had to fight in every country to claim our rights. And so
Sure.
rather, I mean, didn't have that kind of money.
No.
So basically what we decided to do is make a deal with Elorg. And Elorg and Blue Planet Software, which is a company that I created in Hawaii just to be the partner, Elorg and Blue Planet Software formed the Tetris Company as a 50-50 partnership. It lasted for, and I was the exclusive representative of because I was going to do the branding and the sales and the licensing, do all the work. It kind of worked until 2002. They got greedy, and they wanted to just have a licensing agent instead of doing brand management, which it's like Mickey Mouse and just licensing Mickey Mouse to anyone without having anyone making sure that it's actually a quality product. That was
Sure.
all what we did. Anyway, so we spent 3 years fighting, and at the end of 3 years, I was ready to sell my mobile phone game company, and Elorg wasn't going to agree to extending my license, or we were in a big battle. So anyway, we decided to settle with Elorg, and by settling, I mean I bought Elorg.
Wow. So
So
so tell us about it. Did you have to raise money for that, or was it just like
yes,
okay? So did you go to like private equity? How did you raise the money to buy?
we
You
went
bought a
around
Lord,
to
which sounds crazy.
we went around to a bunch of private equity, and raised the money. And it was so. This is another scene in a movie. I can tell you this right now. I'm sitting in Panama, round table, Belikov, myself, and we're waiting for the money to hit his bank account.
Mm,
And he's got the stack of all the contracts, the originals, and he's gonna hand them over to me. And
wow.
the reason it was Panama is because it's the only place that at that time a Russian could go on short notice that was a tax-free zone. It had to happen in a tax-free zone, the
Oh my
transaction.
gosh.
So I flew to Panama. He flew to Panama. We're in the middle of the Panama Canal, and yeah, we finalized the deal.
And this is in '02. This is when this
No, this
happened.
is in '05, somewhere. Yeah, '05.
And so in '05 you end up buying Elorg, and take us to like through the process, because it sounds to me like, okay, cool, now you have what you need. Like Tetris is still this worldwide phenomenon. No one knows that the mobile phone is about to go from Nokia to Apple, which
Wait,
happens
wait,
in
wait, wait.
'07.
By that time, it was already a big deal. My company went from zero to, I don't know, $20 million revenue in
Oh
3 years. So it's
wow, okay, sorry.
at that point that I'm buying a Lorg. Uh,
Gotcha. So
and
yeah, and I didn't mean to brush over that. So this is a legit company. You buy a Lorg, you raise some capital. It's 2005, and the world's about to change, because we're on these pixelated flip phones, and we're about to move over 2 years later into the iPhone era.
yeah,
And so you try to license the deal. They offer you 25K for it.
that's in
Tell
20.
us what happened.
That's 2002. I get the offer of 25,000. I was
Oh,
licensed
gotcha. Okay,
Tetris all the way along. That's when I decided to create my own company, and we opened the
got it.
doors on this company on April Fool's Day of 2002. So,
so So you open April Fools 2005, and then when did you end up exiting for the 100 million?
yeah, 3 years later.
Oh wow, okay, so that happens in '05. Sorry, pardon me, I lost track of the story there.
Yeah.
So '05, you end up selling. Some guy offers you 25K. 3 years later, he pays you 100 million for the exact same deal. That is absolutely amazing. So everyone makes out.
Well,
And
it's even better than that, because the company that I sold had a 15-year license to Tetris. They didn't own anything.
oh my gosh,
And so during this time, after selling the company, they paid me royalties for 15 years, and then I got the rights back.
in 2020, you got the rights back.
I got the rights back for mobile.
Oh
So we
my
do it
gosh.
again.
So did you guys sell it again? You relicensed it? Is
License
that, I'm
again.
assuming
This
what
time
happened?
shorter periods. We just license it again. This time we're not
Oh
selling
my God.
companies. So
It's such a cool entrepreneurial story, man. I love that. I'm an entrepreneur, man. I've
here's the
built some.
deal. Nobody has a spreadsheet that goes past 10 years.
They can't think that far,
Nobody
man.
cares. Nobody cares. They're going to make their money way before then. So giving them
Right.
15 years was they never thought it was going to be an issue. And
That's
here's another funny part of the story. After I don't know, after $200 million of sales, the royalty rate goes up.
right. I
So
love that. So you had a step up in the royalty.
it's a
That's
step up
amazing.
because they've done all of their marketing and whatever. It's a step up in the royalty. So again, it's something that nobody cares about after so many. They've made their money already. So the step up in
Yeah.
the royalty is no big deal. So
That's like entrepreneur. I have a saying. I call it entrepreneurial amnesia. This is when people forget about what happens in the beginning and they screw you on the deal later. This is the opposite of that. This is like they forget that this is gonna be worth something later, and then they basically don't think far enough in advance. So were you like, hey, listen, Alexi, these guys, they don't think this is gonna last 15 years, so we're gonna take this thing back. Did you go in knowing you're like, we're gonna own this thing again in 2020?
oh yeah, I mean definitely. But Alexei is not a business guy. He basically leaves it up to me. We
Yeah,
shook hands in 1993. We shook hands on a deal of how we're going to split up the money. And that deal still survives today. We've gone through different entities. He's moved to the States, got his US citizenship. I went from being a Hawaii company to being Delaware to being Nevada, whatever. I've moved companies and changed organizations and moved things around. And that original handshake is still the same. And by the way, the
I
contract,
love it.
each time we have a new organization, my lawyer said, Alexei needs an attorney to represent him in this new structure. And I go to Alexei, you need an attorney. And Alexei goes, Hank, if I get an attorney, your attorney is going to have my attorney for breakfast. I trust you. You take care of me. That's a much better deal than I can get through an attorney. And I have to go back to my attorney and say, listen, this has got to be a fair deal. The original deal is the
Yeah,
handshake in 1993. It's that handshake has to survive. And
yeah.
so that's how it's always been. And Alexei and I are still best friends today. Whenever we're in the same jurisdiction in the same city, every other day it's a bottle of wine.
Yeah,
And we're not talking about Tetris, although we do talk from time to time, but it's mostly friendship kind of conversation.
I love that, man. Sounds like an amazing partnership. So, let's talk about the pivot moment. You said that like your life changed pretty dramatically. Um, a heart attack happened. I'd love to hear about that. I think sometimes they say that like life happens to you or for you, and this sounds
Yeah.
like a life
And
happens for you moment.
and I got to say, that it was a wake up call. What are you doing with your life? And so, afterwards, as I was in the recovery room, I said, like, what did I mean by stuff? It was obviously something I said at the moment that I was about to die. So it must have been really important. And then I thought forward. I said, okay, what is it that's going to piss me off if I didn't do something about it when I'm actually dying in the future, say
Mm,
80, 90, whatever. And I searched for and found my bucket list. I found my missions in life. I decided to have 4 missions because I have 4 kids.
nice.
So I thought, oh, 1 mission for each kid. It's not actually
Yeah,
working out that way, but I have 4 missions.
I love it.
First mission came to me in the back of the newspaper while I was still in the hospital, and it said, oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. I fell in love with the ocean when I moved from New York to Hawaii when I was 18. And I said, what's causing that? It's ocean acidification. What's causing that? It's carbon dioxide. I was like, you idiots. What do you think it's okay for us to kill all the coral in the world? No, it's not. And so mission number
Yeah,
mission number 1 is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. Number 2 is to end war because I protested against the war while I was in high school. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your blanking war. I don't know if I'm allowed to use the F word on in a podcast.
you are actually it's a favorite on our show, but so don't worry about it.
Okay, 1, 2,
I've
3,
been watching.
4. We don't want your fucking war. That's
There you
that's what,
go. There
that's
you
what
go.
we were protesting in high school because we're 17. They're going to send us to Vietnam the next year. And
Yeah.
so we stopped the war in Vietnam. I really believe that young people have the power to really change the future, like we changed the future at that time. And that's
Yeah.
number two. Number three is to make a backup of life by going to other planets. I Moon, Mars, other planets in other solar systems. That's where we need to go. It's like the next step. Mother Nature has never had a baby. We are the way that Mother Nature has a baby by going to another
Yeah.
planet, starting life as we know it. And so it's the reason humans exist. And it's probably the reason that she's letting us trash this planet, is so that we feel
Yeah.
like we might have to go somewhere else. And then the last one, and the last one is there just to make the other one seem easy, is to figure out how the universe ends and do something about it.
Wow. That's amazing. I love.
Those are my four missions. I spend most of my time on number one, and I spend some time on number three, and almost no time on two and four. So the number one. So I started a foundation in Hawaii called the Blue Planet Foundation, working to end the use of carbon-based fuel in Hawaii. We did all kinds of things. Helped the solar industry. We helped the solar industry, wind. But our biggest claim to fame is we got Hawaii to pass a mandate of 100% renewable energy by 2045. So
Nice.
Hawaii went from it's impossible to we are definitely going to do this. And 6 months later, after we passed the mandate, the electric company, who fought us tooth and nail, their lobbyists versus our lobbyists in the legislature, the electric company came out and said, yeah, we figured it out. We can actually do this by 2040. And more recently, we changed the business model of the utility so they make more money by switching to renewables. Guess who's our best friend now?
The energy company, I'm guessing.
And
Yeah.
our 2030 goal was 40% renewable energy. We have already hit our 2030 goal today.
Wow.
So we are
What percentage was that again? Say that percentage one more time.
40%. We are at 40% today.
Wow.
So we are
That's for the
moving
whole state. That's for the entire state of Hawaii.
for the entire state of Hawaii.
Wow.
Not only that, but 22 other states have similar legislation to ours. 100% by such and such a date. And so it's moved. The domino effect has happened. After Hawaii, California copied us 2 years later, and so on. It's been moving across the country, but it hasn't been moving across the world. And so I started the Blue Planet Alliance to get that same movement going across the world. So we're flipping islands now. Last year we did Palau, Tonga, Tuvalu, and this year we're going to do a whole bunch more. Basically, that wave is going to pass through the islands and go onto the countries. Panama has recently asked us, can we join? And I said, sure, of course you can. So
That's amazing. I have a question for you because what you just said. I was just thinking back to. Well, I have two questions for you. So, quick question: how old were you when you had the heart attack?
52.
So 52. So super young. Have the heart attack. Decide to go after these four areas of your life based on your four children. Found the Blue Planet Foundation. And what I heard you say, which struck me, was, and I wrote this down just now, that you're not afraid to challenge the impossible. And I'm curious, like, when you start to think of have you always been like that, or has it been something where you've seen these impossible things become possible, and that, hey, I just have to go out there and make it happen? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, impossible is a ridiculous word. Impossible. Like there's so many things that are impossible, like doing something about the end of the universe. That's probably impossible. Okay, maybe, but it's impossible. But everything else is just a matter of time. So when people say that's impossible, I was on a panel, and this is like right around the time that I passed the mandate, and I said, we're going to go 100% renewable energy in Hawaii by 2045. The guy next to me says, I'm a researcher at the University of Hawaii. What you're saying is impossible. It's impossible for us to go 100% by 2045. And I got the mic and I said, well, I'm not as smart as this guy, so I'm going to do it anyway.
I love it.
And we are totally doing it anyway. So whenever you get an quote unquote expert telling you that something is impossible, It just means that it's very difficult. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. So the word impossible is being used in the wrong way. It's just very difficult. And if it's very difficult, then it means it's doable. We just have to our get our act together and do it.
I love that, man. So another thing you said that really struck me is, I'm a big Charlie Munger fan, and he says, you show me people's incentives, I'll show you their behavior and outcomes. And you mentioned that you guys really changed the framework of incentives for the powers that be. Like, tell me a little bit about that, because once their incentives change, now they're your best friend. Before that, you're basically taking money out of their pocket. And, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you want to look at it, money makes the world go round. And if we want to change the incentives, by the way, I'm a conscious capitalist. So everything you're saying, like, I'm all in on this stuff. But I am also a capitalist in the sense of I understand that you need to adjust incentives. I can't just go and say, hey, I'm going to disincentivize you. You better change. Now that's going to create friction. If we want the people that have power to change their behavior, we need to change their incentives. Tell us a little bit about how you did that.
Well, okay, how we did it, of course, if we find a way for the utility to make more money, they're going to help us. They're not going to fight us on that. Are you so if you can just show them that they can make more money by switching to renewables. Here's the thing. I mean, the calculation is fairly simple. So in Hawaii, the utility spends 25 cents per kilowatt hour for oil-based electricity, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Renewables, when they do a PP, a power purchase agreement, PPA, wind and solar come in at 8 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And if you add storage, it's up to 12 cents. That's still half the cost of oil-based electricity. So if their old business model was 10% on the price of oil, that's 2.5 cents. So if we say, okay, you can make 3 cents on the price of renewables, that is a serious amount of money for them.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge motivator. And here's the deal. Here's the craziness of the world right now. We subsidize fossil fuel to the tune of $7 trillion a year. $7 trillion. Okay?
Wow.
And so renewable energy has to fight with fossil fuel that's being subsidized to the tune of $7 trillion. What if they give renewable energy $7 trillion to match the subsidies that they give the fossil fuel? That would, first of all, create a level playing field. And then it would be completely obvious that renewable energy is much cheaper. In Texas, the Texas utility buys wind for less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour. I mean, and then geothermal, same thing. I mean, there's so many energy sources that are out there that are so cheap. And it's just the juggernaut of the way things are that's stopping us from switching over. And if we start thinking, hey, you know what? I would like to incentivize the renewable energy industry because it's affecting climate change. And the amount of money that we're going to have to spend to mitigate the effects of climate change, we're going to have to move every major city that's near the ocean in the next 100 years. Because if we melt Greenland, that's 30 feet of sea level rise. Yeah. And we're doing our best to melt Greenland. So, I mean, this is the problem. People don't think past 10 years. When I talk to old people, they say, this is not my problem. I'm going to be dead by the time this happens. Hey, what about your kids? What about your grandkids? What is wrong with you? You don't care about them? Don't they mean anything to you? This is just the way people think, and it's a lot of their mind. They can only think about themselves. They cannot think outside their own lifetime. And this is, this is going to affect our children, and they should get pissed off right now, and they should make us change. That's how we stopped smoking, by the way. Our kids told us, we don't want you to die of lung cancer. Quit smoking. That's the only way it worked. All that advertising on TV never worked. It was kids that told us to stop smoking. Yeah. So kids have to tell us to stop producing carbon dioxide. That's all there is to it. And we need to listen to them.
Yeah. Well, and going back to what we said before is, challenging the impossible, and you're doing it with all the work you're doing with Blue Planet Alliance, the Blue Planet Foundation. I appreciate that work so much, and just taking to heart that that big changes can happen. Your life is a representation of that, just the things that you've done, and I'd love to see how I'm a younger guy, I'm in my 40s. How can I make that? So when you look at trying to make this big paradigm shift, I know it starts with us as individuals, and I know we're nearing the end of the show, so I want to respect your time. So I have two questions, but I want to ask quickly on this one, and then I'm going to get to our greatness question. You know, again, show me your incentives. I'll show you your outcomes. What's something every listener can do after they get off this show where they can go and start to affect the change that you're talking about?
People ask after I speak, they ask me, so what can I do? And my answer is always, I don't know what you can do. You are you, I am me. I can get up here on stage and try to convince you to do something, but you have to figure out what you can do and do that. And start small. Don't think of trying to do something big. The problem is really huge. But if everybody starts small, whatever it is, I don't care what it is, as long as you're doing something. Figure out what it is. The vision of the Blue Planet Alliance is to create a world in which humanity and nature live in harmony. What can you do to move the ball in that direction? Small things. I live in New York now. I don't drive a car. I ride a bicycle and walk, unless it's pouring rain. So, I mean, what is the change in? I don't eat beef. I pick up rubbish when I see it lying around and put it in the rubbish can. That's a Hawaii way of saying garbage.
Right.
But, you can think of these things. Turn off light switches in a room when there's no people there. Whenever I leave my apartment, I turn off all the light switches. Why do they need to be on? I see office buildings with the lights on. It just means nobody gives a shit. They should all be off.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think you're right. Like it starts with you and even the little stuff. And in our family, we're conscious of it. And to your point, like listeners need to be conscious of, hey, like we compost, like what is it? That's one extra step. Like, okay, that goes in trash. That's plastic. And we try to not use plastic. And that's an apple core. Throw it in the compost. Something minor. My kids know how to compost. My kids are little kids. Like, and I go and I see people mixing stuff together. I'm like, guys, like this is like you're literally creating a landfill, which is a problem.
It's our behavior that caused this, and it's our behavior that's going to fix this.
Yeah. Appreciate that so much, Hank. Well, I want to respect your time. We always like to end the show here with two things. First of all, our greatness question, and then we'd love to connect people with ways to help support the different things you're working on. So we're going to go to the greatness question. And for listeners new to the show, we love ending on this. And I'm going to ask you right now, what is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you have overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
So my biggest problem was public speaking. I was terrified. I was terrified of speaking to a class of elementary school kids, for Christ's sake. So what are they going to think of me, And how I overcame that is I made a decision. If somebody asks me to speak somewhere, I will, until I'm over it. And I did. And so every time anybody asked me to speak anywhere, I spoke. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. And now it's like second nature to me. I've done 2 commencements at universities. So I'm no longer afraid of public speaking. And if I'm going to change the world, I'm going to have to be able to speak to larger and larger audiences.
I love that, man. Facing your fears to change the world.
It's whatever it is. It's just Tiger Woods. He's like, what's the worst part of your game? Focus on that until it becomes the best part of your game.
Yeah, I love that, man. Oh, Hank, what an amazing hour plus of my time. I really appreciate all the work that you have done and continue to do in the world. I'd love for you to, for anyone that wants to see the movie or support the foundation or the alliance, what are some ways that they can learn more about the work you're doing or connect with you and your team?
BluePlanetAlliance.com.
All right, you guys heard it from Hank, BluePlanetAlliance.com. Go see the movie Tetris. It's on Apple Plus. It'd be the best 2 hours of your day, outside of maybe hugging your kids or saving the planet. With that said, Hank, so much gratitude from us here at the Greatness Machine. Appreciate everything you're doing, man. This has been one of my favorite hours I've probably spent on the show, and appreciate you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Oh, listen, audience, leaders, we're sharers, we're givers. You got to share this. I mean, the first part of this show is just such a great entrepreneurial story. The last part of the show is a message everyone needs to hear. They need to work on. It's our kids' lives. Our lives are at stake here. With that said, we're all about creating greatness, and we got to be on a planet that could sustain it, or another planet, one or the other, to make it happen. Until next time, peace out. We love you. You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.